Welcome to the Crazy Poultry Inc. podcast. I am your host, Ian Gaio Loco Novak. And with me, as usual, are a couple of guests. I have my longtime cohort on this, Mr. Nick Nicorish Chicken.
What's up, guys?
And for a first time appearance, our good buddy, and please take this as a compliment, Damon, probably the sickest fucked up mind I know.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that.
And he's not quite fully clothed.
Never usually am.
Totally naked right here, believe that. Thank you for joining us here, Damon, for this special I wanted to do. Because I was trying to think of ways to incorporate you into this channel if you ever wanted to. And I felt like I came up with a good idea.
Oh yeah, I really enjoy it. I really like the intros too. It's a pretty cocky intro, so.
Well, that was the debut. Before we dive into this, I think we can all agree that we're not going to talk about personally wise, but Tim Burton's a pretty good director.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Every director has his ups and downs. It's going to happen, but it's fair to say he's a pretty nice person.
He's got an interesting take on things, that's for sure. Not a bad thing, but...
Yeah. So what we're going to do is, if you guys recall, this was a while ago now, a few years, along with Mr. Nicorish Chicken over there, myself and Nick Fargo, who's been on this channel a few times before, we did a bracket system of the best Pixar films. And that was a good time and stuff. So I thought of, well, how can we try to do the same thing with Burton? Oh, well, we'll do a Burton bracket, which consists of all 19 of his films that he's done.
Minus, Nightmare.
Yes, we have to acknowledge this. Nightmare Before Christmas is not on here because people have to realize that that is not his film. He produced and he wrote a poem about the Jack Skellington character. That is all he did. It was directed by somebody completely else.
That's so good.
Yeah, contrary to popular belief.
So that is not on here. Otherwise, we probably would have figured it would have at least made to the finals, possibly win. I don't know if win, but maybe the finals.
Definitely make it close, for sure.
So what I did was I took on the unfortunate task of, I watched all of these. And that's even going back to when Nick and I saw Dumbo in the theaters, which I'm sure you still, Damon, have not seen it.
Yeah, I've not seen Dumbo yet.
So you're going to be a little bit clouded on that judgment going in.
And there's a couple of these that I haven't seen in a while, but I do remember them. So
yeah. I literally went through this entire month watching them, so that was the challenge I gave myself. But then I had the unfortunate task of trying to rank these of top 19. And so what I did was I took a combination of Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, and then a little bit of the box office report. And funny enough, you think he's divisive with people? He's divisive with critics, too.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of up and downs, for sure.
Because one part he's high on Metacritic, and another part he's low on Rotten. So,
well, as you mentioned, there's a lot of up and downs with most directors. Like, sometimes they'll have 5 or 6 good films, and then 5 or 6 that just people completely hate.
But then those exact opposite people will defend.
Yeah.
But that's just the way this is. So, because there's 19 and Mr. Nick, who made the bracket, had to divisively put, the top 3 on buys, or top 4s?
I had to... Yes, the top 3 are on buys, and the bottom 6 are play-ins. So basically the bottom 6 seeds are the play-ins, and then the winners of those face the top 3 seeds.
Okay.
Trust me, it took a little bit, but it got done.
So we'll see how this goes. We'll see if there's any surprises. But before we start this, the ground way I want to point this in how this was going to work with the voting. Because again, I have to say, a movie has to move on with 2 votes, and we'll go around the table, different orders and stuff, so everybody gets a vote. If there's 2 votes automatically, that team moves on. Sorry, this is a movie. This is bracket. I'm thinking about basketball. But if that person would have voted differently, he's free to say that if he would have voted differently. And before you make your vote, just say like a little bit of a thought of that film for you before you make it. And the top 3 things I want you to think about going into the picking is third, your personal preference of ranking these. Second, quality of the film. And then first and foremost, you watch it and you think Burton. That's the key thing to think about, that you think of Burton with this. So with that said, y'all ready?
Always.
As I'll ever be.
Okay, so in the first round, we have the number 16 seed Alice in Wonderland going up against number 17 Dumbo. And I know this is going to be hard considering you've not seen this, but since you're the newest guest, Damon, I'll let you have the first casting vote.
Okay. As far as I've seen, I've watched Alice in Wonderland, and it's okay. It's clearly not as good as previous adorations, but I don't hate it, but I don't like it either. And Dumbo, I've not seen it, and I've heard very mixed, but overall, just from what I've seen from the trailers, it looks pretty solid. I mean, I like how Dumbo looks, at least.
Now remember, this is just putting up against the other one, though.
Yes.
So
if honestly, I'm going to have to go with Alice, just because I've seen Alice, and I haven't seen Dumbo, so I can't compare them.
Okay. That is one for Alice. Mr. Nick, who are you going to pull for?
No, this is the first one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been, what, 4 years since the first one? Regardless, I actually enjoyed the first one. It wasn't like a fantastic movie, but Johnny Depp did a great job, I thought. And then comes Dumbo, which, I struggled to get engaged in that movie at all. They made him look cute and all that stuff, but as far as the other characters go, I didn't think they brought much to the table, so I'm going with Alice in Wonderland.
Okay, well, just like that, Alice moves on to the next round.
And I had to shorten some of the names because they wouldn't fit in the...
No, I'm going to make a few jokes there that I've seen. And if I'm going to throw this out there, I would have gone with Dumbo. Next playoff round, we have the number 15 Mars Attacks up against number 18 Planet of the Apes. So now going in a different order, Mr. Nick, how do you feel about these two films, and who do you pick to move on?
Well, Mars Attacks is a interesting movie. It's a bunch of actors. I don't even remember who all was in it, but I remember there was a ton of them. And I definitely remember the sounds that they made. That yeah. But it was great. And then the worst Planet of the Apes, I believe, out of all of them. So, based on saying that, I'm going with Mars Attacks.
Okay, so now it comes to my vote. Not two particularly fond films for me, but the thing that separates it is I'm going to lean more towards a more original thought that he kind of wanted to make, even though he was kind of in a cynical point in his career with Mars Attacks. He did everything reverse that would be happening. But Planet of the Apes is so boring and so misleading, and it has one of the worst twist endings, that based on that alone, I have to go with Mars Attacks. So just like that, Mars moves on. Damon, if you had to pick?
Honestly, I was going to go with Mars Attacks too. It's not a lot of people like the film, but I'm one of them that actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
And I think I look at it from a perspective of what it is, it being kind of a goofy, supposed to be a parody of everything of the old kind of alien films. So I choose Mars too.
Okay. Next of the playout of the other ones, we have number 14, Miss Peregrine's Home of it. Miss Peregrine's. It's too long of a name. Versus number 19, Dark Shadows. So it's my turn to go with the first pick. Not two that I'm gigantically fond of. and they're both him like reimagining something that's already existing, because I looked up if Miss Peregrine was a book or something, and it is, and it came out before. The tone in the story is just so bad, and it just falls apart in Dark Shadows that just barely I'm going to go with Miss Peregrine because it feels more like a Burton movie too. I only liked Eva Green in Dark Shadows. That's about it. So that's one for Miss Peregrine. Damon?
If I compare the two, as much as I love Johnny Depp, the problem I find with it is they're taking something that was already kind of established, which Miss Peregrine's is still established, but you're taking a TV show that was pretty well received and turning it into kind of a, raunchy comedy almost. And I just feel like it didn't fail, so I'm going to have to go with Miss Peregrine's.
And just like that, Miss moves on. Nick, if you had a quick say who you would have picked?
I can't believe it, but I would have gone Miss Peregrine, because we all know how I had disdain for that movie, but Dark Shadows was worse.
Okay. And so now we move on to the official start of the bracket. And to start off, we have number 1, Edward Scissorhands, up against Alice in Wonderland. Damon, who is your pick?
I think this is a pretty easy choice.
Right?
Edward Scissorhands, as a child, was one of my favorite movies, but looking at it from a Burton film, it's one of his probably most well-known, if not his most well-known film. That destroys Alice by any means. I'm definitely going with Edward.
Nick, do I think I can feel who you're gonna pick in this? We're not gonna see a giant upset.
No, it was cool because this was the first movie with Deb and Burton, and I thought Winona Ryder did a really good job as well. So easily
definitely.
Edward Scissorhands, not even close.
Just like that, Edward moves on.
There is no upset.
And my small little thing in here, I would have picked Edward too. I'm glad I'm never gonna have to watch Alice in Wonderland again. Okay, so here's an interesting of the middle rankings. We have number 9, Batman Returns, up against Batman 89 at number 8.
Damn it.
And who gets the first pick on this? Mr. Wood, who do you go with?
Oh my god. Well, gosh darn it. First of all, I'm going to say they're both good movies to me, and my favorite Batman is in both of them, Michael Keaton. You got Jack Nicholson, and then you got everybody in Batman Returns. Right. But I more grew up with Batman Returns, and I did enjoy it a little bit more, so I'm going to go Batman Returns. Both good movies, though.
Okay. So that's one for Returns. My pick. This was so difficult because I grew up with Batman 89. It, in fact, came out 4 months before I was born. So I think that established that I was going to be a Batman fan. And I'm one of those few, like Nick over here, that personally I don't care. I still have it up there as far as DC films. And yeah, it's not a perfect representation of what Batman was, but it wasn't supposed to be. But this brought it serious. Comics could be taken serious. However, Batman Returns feels more like Burton, because what it was is there was more studio behind Batman, and because it made so much money, it said, yeah, hey Burton, you can take the reins now. It just didn't make as much money because how much darker it was. So just because of that, I'm going to also go with Returns.
And then you add in DeVito and Walken. So.
But I still love Batman 89. Real quick, who would you have gone with, Damon?
Well, they're both really solid films in my opinion. But the problem I have with Batman is simply the first thing that we are judging it by. If it feels like a Tim Burton film. And it does in some aspects, but Returns just amps it up to another level and brings in Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito, in my opinion, just destroyed it. Yeah. So I'd probably go with Returns.
Okay, so it would have been across the board. Up next, we have number 4, Frankenweenie, up against number 13, Sleepy Hollow. And this is my pick first. I'm going to try to make this quick, but this is so difficult because I love the animation of Frankenweenie, but I love what he was actually capturing that Sleepy Hollow actually was. And if it wasn't just for a few emotional moments that I just don't see from characters in Frankenweenie, I'm going with Sleepy Hollow for the upset.
Well, watching both films, they're both really, really good films. And Frankenweenie, I seen it when I was pretty young, and it felt very Tim Burton-ish. Like, it almost felt like Nightmare. Although he didn't, necessarily have much to do with it, it still felt like something that he would do. But the problem there is Sleepy definitely feels very Tim Burton. So I'd have to go with Sleepy as well.
And just like that, there's an upset. Frankenweenie is out. Sleepy is moving on. Nick, real quick, who would you have gone with?
I would have gone Frankenweenie.
Okay.
I just love stop motion, and that was pretty horror, so I don't know.
Yeah, I will say stop motion is definitely very underutilized.
Well, real quick here, Burton is always wanting more stop motion, so he's keeping it alive. Up next, we have number 12. Yes, number 12, Big Fish, up against number 5, Beetlejuice. Damon, quick as you can. Who's moving on?
Wow.
Why to punch me in the gut? I absolutely love Big Fish. It was a very sad, solid film. But when we go over to look at something like Beetlejuice it's all Burton. It really is. It captures to me what Burton is about, like a dark kind of comedy. Like, you have emotion in it, you have everything that you would want in a Tim Burton film, and it captures it. So I'd have to go with Beetlejuice as much as I love Big Fish.
Okay, that's one for Beetlejuice. Nick, who are you going with?
This one's easy for me. Growing up a huge Beetlejuice fan and Michael Keaton, I thought this was his most manic work by far, and it was creepy and funny and all you could ask for. Big Fish was pretty good, but to me it wasn't even close. I'd go Beetlejuice in a heartbeat.
And Beetlejuice moves on. And my 2 cents, honestly, after watching it again, I barely would go with Big Fish. The acting and the story is just too good for me to pass on. And to me, the part that this represents of Burton is how much he loves to tell stories.
I can agree with that.
But that's not what we're getting. Up next, we have number 2, Sweeney Todd, up against Mars Attacks. Mr. Nick, who is your pick to move on?
This is kind of easy for me. It's a pretty masterful job, I think, Tim Burton did with Sweeney Todd. That's all I really have to say about it. I've watched the movie more than once, enjoyed it every time. Mars Attacks is more of a spoof movie to me, so I thought Sweeney Todd feels like more Tim Burton to me, so I'm going with Sweeney Todd.
Okay, that's one for Sweeney. And I am also going to have to go with Sweeney Todd. In case you didn't realize, I was not a giant fan of Mars Attacks. I personally found it kind of annoying sometimes. And Sweeney, I think, also got me back into musicals, so that's why I give him more credit. So Todd moves on. Damon, real quick, who would you have gone with?
As much as I love Mars Attacks, I would have went with Sweeney too. That was I think that's his best remake out of all things.
Well, yeah,
he brought back.
as adaptations go.
Yes.
Yeah. So up next, we have the number 10. Because of the way this is written, I'm just going to say it once. Pee-wee's Big A.
Oh.
Hey.
Up against number 7. And I'm waiting for your reaction. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So my first pick, for a long time I did not know that not only was Pee-wee done by Tim Burton, that it was his first film. And I'm going to go with Pee-wee because I do not care for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Not really. I can only give it one credit, and it's the set design. It looks cool. That's about it. So, one vote for Pee-wee. Who are you going with, Damon?
Well, first off, all I got to ask is why? Why would something like that come out of such a great mind? But Pee-wee has to take it. It was a perfect jump, and I still don't know what was in his head when he thought, I'm going to remake that movie. I'm going to base it on that book. But it is what it is, and it's already done. So,
Well, if we have time, I might acknowledge some of the stuff that you're talking about. Nick, do I feel like I know where you're going?
Oh yeah, Pee-wee.
Okay.
I wanted to hear Tim Burton and Paul Rubens' conversations.
Okay, and up next, we have the number 3 seed, Ed Wood, up against Miss Peregrine. Damon, who are you going with?
not even a thought about it. Ed Wood, 100%.
Nick?
Ed Wood.
Ed Wood moves on just like that.
Plus, it's named after me, so come on now.
Well, he has a thing for Ed, in case you haven't noticed. And up next, we have the number 11 seed, Big Eyes.
Which I just watched.
Up against number 6, Corpse Bride. And
Oh
Nick, you have the first pick.
Thanks for that. Been a while since I've seen Corpse Bride. I'm trying to think about what year it came out, but I just watched Big Eyes, if I said fish. And
There's actually a theme of big also in this. But go.
oh, that's right. I'm
He likes him big.
okay.
Pee-wee's big.
Corpse Bride was very cool, visually imaginative, and
actually the first work of Leica.
oh yeah, which is they've jumped out of the scene. But yeah, it's a pretty bittersweet movie.
It's also the shortest of all of them.
Yeah, Big Eyes was unusual, but it didn't seem too Burton to me. Like maybe a couple of things, but definitely not as much as Corpse Bride. I'm going Corpse Bride.
And another little side thing about Corpse Bride, it actually was a dual directing. It was him and somebody else that also directed it. Again, some of the stop motion stuff to me doesn't have great emotional depth sometimes, but this is like his first time and it looks really great. Big Eyes, I think, is like one of his good like acting chops that he has directed. It just doesn't have a lot of feel of Burton.
Yeah.
And of all the ones that are actually good, that have good acting, it's also probably the least rewatchable for me, but I'm still going to keep it. So I'm going to cast my vote for Corpse Bride, so it's going to move on. Damon, if you had a quick pick?
Yeah, I would honestly would go with Corpse Bride too, because as Ian mentioned, it's a very good acted film, but it's not very...
Okay.
Yeah, it's not very, comparing it to Corpse Bride, it just doesn't feel Tim Burton-ish, whereas Corpse Bride did.
I did like, though, he did take a stab at doing an indie kind of feel, too.
Yeah.
So, goes back to me now. It's, moving on to the next round, we have number 1, Edward Scissorhands, up against Batman Returns. Because it's his own original idea and more of his feeling, I'm going with Edward. I still really like Batman Returns, but it's also him taking something and reimagining it, so I give it more props to him, so I'm going to go with Ed.
I agree. Edward definitely takes it for me, just because they're both good films, but Edward is, again, original, and it still is probably super iconic, so definitely Edward.
Well, Ed moves on. Nick, if you had a quick pick?
At the smidge, I'd go Scissorhands, but Returns is up there with Dark Knight for my favorite Batman movie, so...
Okay. Next round, we have number 13, the surpriser right now, Sleepy Hollow, going up against number 5, Beetlejuice. What the... Nick, you have first vote?
Well, again,
No, wait. Damon
yeah,
does.
as I say, wait. Damon.
I'm trying to figure out a way to keep this
Yeah,
up.
definitely. I would have to go with Beetlejuice. As much as I like Sleepy Hollow, it's just, again, like Edward, probably his most iconic films. It's all Burton.
Okay, Nick?
Yep, Beetlejuice, one of my favorite movies. Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder. That's all you're really going to say.
And just like that, Beetlejuice moves on to the final 4.
It's gonna hurt.
Yeah, this would have been difficult for me, but since it's more original and more of his thing, I would have gone slightly with Beetlejuice. I still really think that people need to appreciate Sleepy Hollow more, though.
I definitely agree with that.
So up next we have the number 2 seed, Sweeney Todd, going up against number 10, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, or Big A as it's written on here.
Dang it.
Nick, you cast the first vote.
Gosh. As much as this pains me, because I grew up a big Pee-wee fan, just because I think it's, again, more Burton and better movie in my opinion, I'm going to go Sweeney Todd.
Okay. Yeah, these are basically 2 reimaginings on his part. It's not his original property. So I'm going to go with the one that feels more like Burton and the one that got me more into musicals. I'm going with Sweeney Todd also.
I'd have to say Sweeney would be probably my choice as well. As much as I love Pee-wee and Paul Rubin, I just...
Is there a difference between the two, though?
Not really. I'd definitely go with Sweeney, though.
Sweeney Todd makes it to the final 4.
Wait, he was Spleen, too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And up next we have the number 3, Ed Wood, up against the number 6, Corpse Bride. And I cast the first vote. Johnny Depp against Johnny Depp. Ed Wood, I've watched it twice since I had to do this, and I think it's really, really good, and it deserves a lot of praise, so I'm going to give it to Ed Wood.
I couldn't agree more. Ed Wood, I mean, Corpse Bride is a solid film, but Ed Wood is just, it's an incredible film. Like, I would request everyone watch it at least once.
Nick?
My boy Ed.
There's a lot of boys named Ed in this universe.
Okay, my long-distance family member.
Okay, we are in the final 4. We have number 1, Edward Scissorhands, up against number 5, Beetlejuice.
God.
And Mr. Damon, you cast the first vote.
So, Beetlejuice versus Edward Scissorhands. If I really have to go, which, the first film, they both to me feel like films that, like I said, they're both iconic films. But if I have to go to the second, and I have to really choose a personal bias, and it's Beetlejuice.
Okay, that's a poll for Beetlejuice. Nick.
I love both films, but again, like him, I have a personal feeling for Beetlejuice, so Beetlejuice is the winner!
Beetlejuice moves on to the final.
But by the finest hair.
Yeah, we're touching
yes.
like...
I'm like scratching my knee right now. I have my bloody knee.
So, bracket expert over here, is 5 beating 1 an upset?
Yes. Oh, okay. God, yeah. Absolutely.
And if I would add a pick, I honestly did not like Edward when I first saw it, and now it's grown on me so much, I would have picked Edward.
That's a fair thing.
It
Nobody's
just connected me more. Now we have number 2, Sweeney Todd. Again, it's Johnny Depp against Johnny Depp. Against number 3, Ed Wood. And Mr. Wood, you cast the vote. Are you going to go Wood?
I am. But again, by the tiniest hair, they're both fantastic movies, and I wouldn't fault anybody for picking either of them. So, but Ed Wood, that movie has grown on me a lot lately, so I have watched it twice.
Yeah, as I previously mentioned, I have watched Ed Wood twice since starting this, and it may be my favorite Johnny Depp performance, along with so many other great performances, and to me, it also captures a lot of what Tim Burton loves and what he wanted to put on screen. So, like that, Ed Wood is in the finals. Damon, if you had to pick?
I would have chose Ed Wood as well, just because although Todd is a very solid film, there's a little, a few things that I necessarily didn't like in it, so that's why it pushes Ed Wood to the top.
And I'm glad I'm last in the final.
Well, here we go with the finals. We have number 5, Beetlejuice, up against number 3, Ed Wood.
So 2 upsets in the final, technically.
Yep. We don't have the top 2 seeds in here. And it comes to me to make the first pick. As I've stated, if I look at the first two things that I have to look at when I try to pick a film, which is quality and Burton, Ed Wood is kind of the top for me. I think that it's his perfect representation of what he loves, what he wants to capture. Great acting all around. Martin Landau won an Oscar for that performance. Johnny Depp was up for an Oscar for that performance. And I think it's Johnny Depp's best work. So I love Beetlejuice, but I can't ignore the quality of Ed Wood and how it feels more like Burton, so I'm going with Ed Wood.
Coming to be, my first time here, it's kind of strange being the final kind of say in this, but...
No, he's the final.
Oh, well, that makes me feel a little more hopeful. But, I look at Beetlejuice, and Beetlejuice is very Tim Burton, but the thing is, if I compare it with quality, there's many aspects of it that I'm like, some of the acting, isn't the greatest. There's some parts in it that I'm very questionable about. So I'm going to have to go with Ed Wood, because Ed Wood seems to be the one that has the acting, has the Tim Burton feel, and an overall just the quality of the film just is just a step above Beetlejuice for me.
And just like that, because of the second pick, Ed Wood has been claimed the best Burton amongst us in this channel. Nick, I know you didn't get a pick in this. Who would you have just gone for with shits and giggles?
I've gone Beetlejuice. It's, like I said, I've stated before, it's my favorite Tim Burton movie. It will be till the day I die.
Well,
unless
he has yet to make something, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So, guys, we have crowned Ed Wood as the best Tim Burton film. How do we feel about that?
Fine.
I'm not angry about it. It's really hard when you go at something like this when he has so many good films. Like, if you knew the pain that it was to choose Beetlejuice over Edward Scissorhands, it hurt very severely.
I may have had Beetlejuice and possibly Nightmare in the final.
But
if it would have been eligible, because those are the two that I grew up with the most.
So now, just for like a little bit of back of this behind the scenes stuff, would you guys like to know the actual rankings on both those sites I looked up?
Sure.
Okay, here's Rotten Tomatoes rankings on Burton films. So going from 1 to 19, Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, Pee-wee, Frankenweenie, Sweeney Todd, Beetlejuice, Corpse Bride, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Batman Returns, Big Fish, Big Eyes, Batman, Sleepy Hollow, Miss Peregrine, Mars Attacks, Alice in Wonderland, Dumbo, Planet of the Apes, and Dark Shadows.
Okay, I can see it beating some of that, but how it is above
7?
both the Batman.
It's 8.
Oh, well, regardless. It doesn't
And
ignore
Big
business being
Fish
in the top 10.
blows my mind.
Yeah, no, Big Fish, I have noticed that when it first came out, it wasn't really understood, I think. Because here's then the Metacritic scores from 1 to 19. Sweeney Todd, Corpse Bride, Edward Scissorhands, Frankenweenie. Frankenweenie was 4 on both. If you were mad, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
Holy crap.
Ed Wood, Beetlejuice, Batman, Batman Returns, Sleepy Hollow, Big Eyes, Big Fish, Miss Peregrine, Dark Shadows, Alice in Wonderland, Mars Attacks, Dumbo, Planet of the Apes. Pee-wee was last.
I will have to say, and don't gut me for this, but I understand why Charlie is that high. Not because of the quality of the film, but I feel like sometimes you jump into something like that and, especially critically, people might look at it differently. Because I know people who generally think it's better than the original. I'm not going to say those people are, insane, but you have people that, will like bad films sometimes. It's very well known that people love bad films. That's why they keep getting put out.
And just to, like how I mentioned before, Now, out of all these films, do either of you two know actually what is his highest grossing film?
I'd have to say probably Batman, I would think.
Nope.
Hang on. I'm going to say Alice.
Yep.
Oh!
Alice in Wonderland made $1 billion.
Just because of what it is, I think. I mean...
Again, it's kind of the same thing, especially people want to take their kids to something, and I guess I can understand why maybe Batman, because, Batman had always been a kind of a goofy kind of character, so, and I've seen, like the original trailers for Batman, it was kind of dark, so people probably were like, I'm not going to take my kids to that, because it's a different time back then, and whereas Alice, people love Alice. Like, there's so many people that love Alice in Wonderland, the original story, that it's a much wider thing when you look at something like Batman.
Well, and then here's the thing that I was going to bring up with you about this. So, there's actually a few of these on here that Tim Burton has stated himself that he's not fans of. He made them because he was given the script, and that's what he was offered to do. And because Alice in Wonderland was such a big hit, he could then make something indie-wise, like Big Eyes. He had the money to do it, because a lot of these he self-financed. Edward Scissorhands he self-financed. So it's a little bit like the M. Night Shyamalan, what he's been doing right now, where he's self-financing. He's actually making quality films, but he needs to be given these stuff. He's not just making them himself. So
yeah,
that's why I'm a little lenient on when I talk bad about him.
Yeah, sometimes when you're a director, you go in, they say that, the company that is hiring you says, I want this. And sometimes you have to do what they say. It actually, funny enough, in Ed Wood, there's an aspect of that where those guys fund that film, and they want it to be a certain way. And he's like, no, this is my film. Well, that kind of falls into that.
Which is another reason why I loved Ed Wood, because it shows you what actually goes into being a director, that you don't always have a lot of the say.
It's not always cut and dry.
And then another thing that I really respect and like about him, he's not a fan of CGI. He always wants sets. He always wants makeup. He always wants stop motion. He's a big voice of stop motion. But guess what? Those cost more money, so he needs a studio behind him. So that's why he needs to do projects like Alice in Wonderland. But he didn't want to do the sequel. He immediately turned it down.
Well, I can see he's a naturalist. Like he believes in film.
Yeah, and I feel like he needs to do it.
This
is how he expresses, because he also does art and he does poetry. But this, I think, is like his way to relieve of his, like, whatever's going on in his head. And also, if you look at his filmography, there are a lot of the similar feelings of threads, too.
Yeah, if you look at some of his original films, you can kind of see, not necessarily a, aspect thing, but there's always something that's kind of like everywhere, like an overall tone of the films. And that's why some of the films you see are so dark, because his original films are mostly very dark, because he has a kind of a messed up head.
Well, messed up, but how he grew up was in the suburbs, and he was a babysitter. But when he was young, he said he just flopped in front of the TV. That was his parenting.
And I guess that makes sense with Ed Wood.
And immediately labeled as a weirdo, so, that's also why I connect with him. But there's also stuff like contraptions are always in his films, like Pee-wee, the beginning of that. Big Fish, it's in that. Ed Wood is in that. Models and stuff like that. So yes, he has certainly made some films that are stinkers that I don't want to watch again. Planet of the Apes, Dumbo, Miss Peregrine, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. My own opinion, Mars Attacks. And maybe even Dark Shadows, I don't think I'll ever watch again.
I can agree with most of those. Yeah, don't crucify me, but I've watched Charlie about 500 times.
But that was not of your choice.
Yeah, only about 100 or more.
I've seen once.
It's entertaining for me to watch. I'm not going to say it's a good movie because it's clearly not. But it's something that I could put on and it can be background noise because it's so just out there and goofy, and there's a lot in the scenes that I can sit there and just laugh at the stupidity, and that's why I would watch it.
The only thing, like I mentioned in the beginning, when I first talked about it, that I can, and don't crucify me for this, that I can put over the original, and that's the set design.
Oh, the set design is beautiful.
It's really nice, especially the Chocolate River. It looks more like chocolate than in the original, because the original one looks like sewer water.
Well,
but that's not Gene Wilder. That's none of the kids written the same way they should have been.
The one aspect that I believe that they did right on in that film was definitely they chose Big Roy to be the Oompa Loompas. Because Big Roy, he's a well-known, one of the, a little person actor, and he's...
But if you look at them, if you look at Roy as an Oompa Loompa and you look at the Oompa Loompas from the original, which do you look at and go, that's an Oompa Loompa?
The original.
Yeah.
Well, it is a reimagining, and like I said, I would have, there's a few people that I feel like could have played a role like that, but I'm glad he really went out of his way to find maybe a little person instead of doing like a CGI monstrosity, like I would rather him...
Using big fish, too.
Yeah, he was. I know that we talked a lot. Nick, do you have any more quick thoughts about Burton?
Yeah,
we're approaching the end of our cast.
Like you said, there's a couple of stinkers, but I am a huge fan of his, and I do like his originality, and I like a lot of dark stuff, so he falls right into the category.
I think we all three can agree we like dark stuff.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, he's brilliant in my opinion, and just because of a couple of stinkers isn't going to take me away from seeing what he has to go in the future. So.
Mm-hmm. And also still one of the few Hollywood people that don't have a shady thing that has come up.
Yeah, him and Tom Hanks.
Okay.
I mean, the only other one I can think of is Tom Hanks.
Yeah, between them two, I mean, those are the two. I mean, Tom Hanks is America's dad.
But there's a reason he's going to be playing Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that has been our special Burton talk and bracket. We named Ed Wood as the best Burton film. So to close out, Damon, how did you feel about this experience? And if you would like to plug any social medias that people can talk to you about this.
Not really, but I had a good time. I love talking, first off, love it. And getting to talk about something that I enjoy, which is movies, it's always a good time. I could sit and talk for probably 4 hours about movies that I love.
Because we didn't do that at work.
Exactly.
And there's always an invitation to work out if you ever want to try to continue to be on this channel.
Oh, definitely. It's hard not to. You don't know how hard it was to not speak about these movies after watching them. I want to come in and just tell everything that I love, but I've had to build it up until I came and could talk about it.
Mr. Nick Wood, would you like to plug anything and say your goodbyes for Burton films for right now?
Nick Wood on Facebook, Knickers_Chicken87 on Instagram, Knickers Chicken on Twitter, screw Snapchat. That's about it. Good time. Tim Burton's the man.
Ian Novak on Facebook, GaioLoco89 on Twitter. That's all social media I'm going to plug. Hey, did you guys like listening to this? Check out some of our other videos. I have a couple reviews up, like for Endgame. Check that out. And if you want to keep on seeing these stuff, please subscribe here, give this a like, and click that bell if you want to get instant notification.
Yeah, you should definitely do that, like right now.
This has been Crazy Poultry Inc. See you guys. I hope you guys had fun.